and gentlemen, we are about to begin with the first panel discussion of this conference, the panel discussion that all of us have been waiting for. I would now like to leave the stage to Mr. Vishal to please begin with the panel discussion.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. How's everyone doing on caffeine? Everybody caffeined up? What were the two signs? This, thumbs up, and this. Everybody? Okay, good, great. Thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks a lot for the panel of experts taking out time. I'll take a couple of minutes to set up the context for this conversation. And the first thing I want to acknowledge is that on this stage today, we have about 100 years of security practitioners' experience, right? And I'm trying to compress and take the juice out in the next 30 minutes or so before we open up the panel to the audience, right? So that's a tall task already. So the idea of this panel discussion takes off from where a couple of minutes ago I was speaking on the keynote, which is or the welcome address, right? Which is that every security practitioner today is dealing with a big, what I call the data dilemma, right? Which is there are a lot of reasons to secure and keep data local, and there are a lot of reasons to comply globally, right? And on this stage itself, we've got a wide variety of enterprises and professionals, right? Or professionals who are working for a wide variety of enterprises, right? So we've got Commander Animesh from the Indian Navy, right? And I'll talk about why that represents, in some sense, one extreme. And on the other extreme, we have Suresh from HDFC Bank, right? Which is everybody okay with sound and getting some signal? Can everybody hear me at the back? Okay, great. So at the other end of the spectrum is Suresh from HDFC Bank, which has presence in lots of countries, comes under a lot of compliance frameworks spread globally, right, and so on. And then we've got Ravi from CDSL and Rangarajan from Adani, right, who are in this spectrum. And the idea of this is that, hey, there are extreme security requirements. If Commander Animesh and his team was not doing a good job of protecting our data or protecting the national data working for the Indian Armed Forces, we would have a lot of things to worry about. So thank you. Thanks a lot for your service. And at the same time, if Suresh, Ravi, Rangarajan were not doing their jobs well, then hey, I'm an HDFC Bank customer, and of course a CDSL customer, and so on. Not yet a customer of Adani Defense. I don't know how I could become one, but right. So obviously we've got professionals here who are playing very, very important roles and so on, but they face very different challenges, right? And the idea of this in the next couple of minutes is to bring out this spectrum well, and how each of them are handling different challenges. So that's the idea of the next 30 odd minutes that we have. I'll take I'll give 30 minutes each or 30 seconds each to each of our panel members to just quickly introduce themselves, what is the role that they play for each of the respective enterprises, and then we'll get on with the questions. So we have 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up to a couple of questions from the audience, right? Starting with Mr. Rangarajan.
Yeah. Morning, everyone. I'm Rangarajan, Vice President Adani Defense and Aerospace. I, in my role, lead digitalization and cybersecurity for Adani Defense, as well as being the business head for drones business.
You, Commander Animesh.
Good morning, friends. I'm Commander Animesh. I am Joint Director in Indian Navy. We're working at Directorate of Information Technology, responsible for various projects, including info security policies and issues with respect to data governance, data protection of Indian Navy. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Suresh Shankaran. So I am part of the CISO's team. I basically look into the data protection requirements and identity access management, InfoSec awareness, and certain compliance like SWIFT CSP for the bank. I'm one of the direct report is to the CISO. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ravi here. So, I have over 17 years of experience in IT network security, and in current role, I am part of a CISO team, and I look after the security operations, governance, compliance, and vulnerability management. So, I'm looking forward to this session.
Thank you. And gentlemen, I have taken the liberty of getting to first name basis with everyone, since I've worked personally with all of you before without permission, so I apologize for that, and I hope I can continue to do that. Thank you. So we'll start off with, and I do want to draw out the whole spectrum, right? Let's start with organizations who are most under scrutiny from a global security and compliance perspective, right? And my first question is to you, Suresh, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Rangarajan. Is how do you find out and how do you comply with these global privacy regulations, right? And HDFC Bank is now the fourth or third largest financial services company in the world today, right? 4 to 7, depending on how you measure assets under management and so on, right? So let's say number 5 financial services company in the world, spread across the globe, right, and so on. And if you can specifically talk about, to start with, how is HDFC Bank's team even structured internally, right, to people, role, processes, those kind of things, that will be really helpful.
So HDFC Bank has very segregated kind of setup where I am part of the information security team. There is IT team, there is a business technology function, there is credit operations, so on, and which are sales business functions. So from there is also a strong legal team who look into all these privacy related aspects. Bank has a CISO function, CIO function. There is a data privacy officer, data governance officer, data officer. So lot of focus on and preparing for the DP Act is already the people and process, people are in place, the processes are being evolved, fine-tuned. But to give a background, as a bank, we already were compliant to many regulations, like we are ISO 27000 compliant, we are compliant to PCI DSS, we are compliant to SWIFT related requirements, we are listed in NASDAQ, so we are supposed to comply to SOX audit requirements, we have statutory audit, we have internal audit, so on and so forth. The laundry list goes on. So even today as we speak, there is some diners team who have come to audit the bank for certain regulations. So that way, at least the building blocks are already in place, so which has to be maybe tuned to the DP Act, check when that exact rules and regulations come into picture. We will have to maybe compare where are the points of improvements and how we have to tighten the controls. So that is my submission. So that is how most of the Indian banks would also be facing similar types of regulatory requirements.
So is it like within the bank there is one person responsible for SOX compliance, another one for PCI DSS, another one for DPDPA and so on, or is there a team who says, okay, let me look at common pattern?
Bank has a dedicated compliance team, which is kind of a central team. But every function will also have their own compliance teams. That is like maybe a mothership we can call, but all teams will have to have their compliance spokes in place. So whenever suppose the RBI sends maybe a guidelines which say 300 points, so that would be either individually or jointly distributed to all the stakeholders, and it will be a collective effort. But there will be a central compliance team who will ensure that all the stakeholders collectively work together and deliver what is expected as a team.
Got it.
So there will be many actionables which a single team would not be able to implement. There will be a joint responsibility, but one of them will have to lead and get it closed.
That looks like a couple of organizations by themselves, right? Just managing this bit.
Yes,
but
yes.
Thanks a lot, Suresh. Yeah. So, Mr. Rangarajan, how is at the group level, and then Adani Group has many businesses, right? So how do these compliances and security initiatives get split internally? How are people structured?
Got it. I think at the group level, there are multiple types of compliances, so I'm not
Sure.
going to talk about all of them, but whether it be contractual, legal, cybersecurity, there is an entire set of compliances
I'm
and
sure.
they vary quite a bit by company.
Mm.
What I would like to focus on is the set of compliances which we need to approach from a defense and aerospace perspective.
Sure.
If I look at it that way, Adani Defense as a company, as a defense manufacturer, our interests are tied to national security interests.
Of course.
So, you know, apart from the 250 crore penalty that Mr. Duggal so vigorously...
Everybody knows 250 crores by now, right?
Exactly.
And for people who are not, who've come here not from India, 250 crores is about 30 million, right? Dollars, right? So everybody knows, right?
That, I think that has been very forcefully implanted in our
Absolutely.
brains by Mr. Duggal.
Yeah.
Apart from that, you know, for example, as a defense manufacturer, we are also bound by the Official Secrets Act, which can essentially say that if I, as a defense manufacturer, am found transmitting information in an unauthorized manner or in a manner that can be considered prejudicial to the interests of the state, I can be straight away imprisoned for up to 14 years. So no pressure, but that's essentially what we deal with. And therefore, what we therefore look at is compliance, which is table stakes at the group level, which is handled by a group cyber team.
Okay.
So there is an entire CISO set up at the group level and at the BU level. At the defense specific level, we have extra layers of compliance and protection that we carry out for a lot of the programs that we are privileged to be part of. So for example, we are a development cum production partner to the Indian government for a lot of critical programs, whether it be missiles, drones, and many other things. And therefore, we have what we call 7 layers of cybersecurity, which we implement as part of the overall cybersecurity posture for the defense BU. It starts with thinking of the national security interests, integrating cyber security and physical security, adding layers of encryption on how data at rest, data in motion, and data governance is controlled, and ensuring that all of these are continually monitored and updated on an ongoing basis. So we have our own teams. In fact, some of the team members are already here today. We have essentially, therefore, a structure which takes into account national security interests, implement 7 layers of cybersecurity on top, and ensure that they are churned and governed on an ongoing basis.
I think the example that I always give is that if you think compliance is expensive, right, try non-compliance, right, and then you'll find out what's really expensive. But thanks a lot. My next question is to you, Ravi, and then I'll of course I'll open it up to everybody else, right? So now with DPDPA and similar regulations, coming in from across the world, are you facing a lot of pressure to keep data more and more local to India? And if the answer is yes, how do you marry that with things which are almost forcing you, for example, adopting the cloud could be one, or sharing data with external agencies, which is not really an option anymore, and so on, and adapting the digital workplace and so on. So how do you marry these two, what might appear to be mutually conflicting objectives?
Yeah. So first we need to understand CDSL is a regulated entity.
Right.
So when I say regulated entity, it is regulated by SEBI, Security Exchange Board of India. So all the exchanges, all the depositories, clearing corporation, asset management company, they are the regulated entities.
Right.
So even before the DPDPA Act, SEBI, I think it was around March, they came up with a framework on adoption of cloud services. So it is based on 9 principles, and one of the principles being on the data localization. So we have to understand that DPDPA Act may be, as a law, it may be new, but this concept is not new. We have seen the more or less same arrangement in GDPR. So we have, in fact, as a security practitioner, we have preempted and we have already started working on that well before this framework was given to us by the SEBI. So as part of data localization, when we engage with a provider, so SEBI mandates that this ESP should be MITI certified, Ministry of Electronics and IT. So it should be MITI certified. So what we do when we engage with a cloud service provider, we ensure that their availability zones or the regional data centers are within India. And yes, there are as in our topic we have data dilemma. So with regards to compliance, it is privacy laws are more from the personal side of things, whereas security is more from the enterprise side of things.
Right.
So whereas the privacy demands everything, especially your PII data or SPI data should be masked. So being a security guy, one of the key functions that we have is the detection and incident response. That needs a visibility, right?
Right.
Whereas the privacy demands that everything should be masked, and that more you encrypt the data, more private it becomes. Whereas you lose on the security, right?
And by the way, post lunch we have a very interesting discussion hosted by Isaac exactly on this topic. But I just want to plug that in. But please continue.
Yeah. So as I was saying that we are a regulated entity. So DPDP Act as of now, the SEBI has not released any circular by default. Since it's a law of the land, it is something which needs to be compliant.
So do you find that, I have a follow-up question on that, do you find yourself constrained that, but if you can only adopt cloud services which are MITI approved or certified and so on, and if in theory you could use 100 cloud services, does that bring that list down to 5 already? And therefore, do you see that hampering innovation, hampering digital transformation in any way?
It is the same for us now also, because let's take an example of audit, which is a different example. So all the auditors should be certain, empaneled and certified. So that is the case for the regulated entity. It is slightly different than any other entity for us.
Sure.
And especially, we are living in a post-pandemic era. Everything is externalized. So definitely remaining on-premise is not a choice. So we are already, we have already made our journey on the cloud. Definitely within the confinement of SEBI defined framework. So that for SEBI, CERTIN and NCIPC, these are the 3 regulators which mandate or which define how we should be working at CDSL.
Sure, and I wanted to invite Commander Animesh to comment, right? Right, as we speak, the defense and armed forces are not outside of the ambit of DPDPA. It might happen by January, but are you preparing for it, or are you kind of relying on defense forces being excluded from that?
So when we look at defense, mostly we comply with most of the regulations. Most of our data is local. In fact, most of our critical data is on-prem, not even on cloud. We are very, very sensitive as far as data is concerned. The only aspect where DPDPA, where certain deliberations are going on, is with respect to taking consent of a user for utilizing the data. And in defense, if you are in defense, there is no concept of consent. So we have not heard of a consent from a user. So that is
command and control, right?
It's all command and control, it's all directives.
Right.
So directives are very, very clear. Mostly whenever, like he has brought out, so whenever defense data or any data with respect to, whenever we are entering into a contract with any third party, the terms are very, very clear. There's official secret acts, there's a confidentiality agreement. Nothing moves out, everything is within your own space, own service. Many a times when the data is sensitive, teams from Navy visit these locations to ensure where the data is kept, whether it is conforming to our requirements or not. So as an organization, as far as the security, for us, privacy is security, period. I mean, there is no separate thing, this is privacy, this is security. If privacy is lost, security is lost. So we are very, very concerned, and we are very clear our agenda, or our directives are very, very clear how to handle data. And it has to be as secure as possible. So as far as this new act is coming in, like I said, except for the part where the consent needs to be taken, and probably a slight gray area remains of how to handle the data with respect to veterans who are no longer within the Naval Act or the Military Act. That is the only discussion which is presently going on within the organizations. More or less, we'll be in compliance with most of the regulations.
Got it. Mr. Rangaranjan?
Yeah, I am also like to take on a point that you mentioned. Does it hamper organizational functioning, some of these security layers? I think that's a very good question. And the way I see it is typically how I see the role of AI in organizations. You know, there are always concerns of whether AI can become too intelligent, you know, can it actually take over humanity and so on. But the fact is that an enterprising person will find the opportunity in this entire chaos, right? And I personally believe...
Or an intelligent AI bot in this case.
Or an intelligent AI bot can potentially do that as well. And I personally believe that while there are certain rules and guardrails being put forward, I think it opens up a whole array of opportunities for people to come up with easy to use cyber secure offerings which can, I would say, meld very easily into people's current ways of doing things. How do I ensure that I integrate into business's current workflow in a manner that is least intrusive but still effective? I think that's a great opportunity that companies have to actually address this particular space. I think Seclor is also doing a fantastic job on that front, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
And the other angle I'd also like to call out is, it is also mandated, or I would say important, for the digital teams, the cybersecurity teams, and the IT teams who are, you know, represented here today, to really think about what is the user experience, what is my business experience, and how can I, as a service function, provide the best possible security with the least amount of intrusion at the perimeters on my workflows.
Got it. I have to plug in the Seclor offering over here, and Commander Animesh, you know what you spoke about, right? Like when you send data to all these third parties, which might include, you know, Adani Defense, although I have no personal knowledge of that, by the way, right? One of the patterns that we've seen with enterprises that we work with, you know, across the world, is that third-party risk is turning out to be one of the very big. It was big to start with, but with more and more regulations and security risk, third-party risk is turning out to be a big area of concern for everyone. That, hey, I've secured my network and my devices and, you know, everything that I can control, but business requirements, which includes, you know, Indian armed forces, also have to collaborate with enterprises like Adani and, you know, I'm sure other defense contractors. It's not only the security of my infrastructure, but the security of the whole supply chain around me, right? Which includes vendors, contractors, customers, partners, right? That whole ecosystem. And it's becoming more and more difficult to do that. It's not always possible to send an army of people or a navy of people, right? Or let's say an army of people to go and do third-party vendor audits, right? Because these vendors could be all over the world. Breaches might go undetected in all of these places, right, and so on. So it is a increasingly important area of enterprise risk that we see enterprises around us, you know, starting to focus on, which is, I need to start go look outside and not only within, right? And the weakest link represents the strength of the chain, right? But thanks a lot for your thoughts. My next question is to you again, Commander Animesh, is that data governance has been a popular term and continues to be a popular term, you know, even today. It's crucial to make sure that the data is not accessed by unauthorized people, but it's almost equally important to make sure that it is accessible to the right people, right? And in operations like the one that you run, you know, seconds of delay in access to data could have catastrophic, you know, consequences. Now these might look like, unless you are able to really carve out the right policies and so on, either you make a mistake on either side and it could be catastrophic. How do you manage this? That has to be a big challenge for anybody.
So, like you brought out, Vishal, that's correct. And more than a governance issue, it's a lot of implementation issues. So, even if you put in the policies, when you are actually trying to get those policies implemented, you'll face with technical challenges because security says ki you keep your data safe, keep it enclosed, whereas availability of data you have to ensure, especially if it's a real-time data, it has to reach from one point to the other point at the fastest possible means, and you use technology. There are chances of certain oversights. There's chances of certain, where you leak out certain aspects of security. That is very thin line, and I think as an organization, what we do, so we realize as we move forward, we require this data, and we have to ensure that data is collected first securely. Once we collect this data has to be managed, and third, then it has to be disseminated. I mean, it has to reach the right customer within the organization. Before this governance laws came in 21 itself, we came out with certain governance policies, how to collect the data, what all security measures needs to be undertaken when we are collecting the data, what all security measures needs to be implemented when the data is being transmitted, who will be the respective customers to what kind of data, the probable customers to what kind of data. We are still framing certain governing bodies for individual sets of data to further refine these policies. At the same time, we have a very strong feedback mechanism. So we keep revisiting our methodologies of how we are implementing technology, how we are ensuring that the data reaches the endpoint, as well as what our governing policies are. So you have to keep revisiting and keep improvising as and when the requirement of the organization is. It's always a tough challenge. There's a lot of rework which happens. A lot of consolidation needs to be done, and there is no easy answers to it. But it's always it's a work in progress. If you ask me, it's a continuous work in progress.
Suresh, yeah, it's got to be a difficult challenge, right? Making it available, but not making it too available.
So what I am able to maybe anticipate now is when the card PCI standard came, so it brought in some discipline. So suddenly we realized that we cannot store. I'm just trying to correlate,
sure.
Practical example, that you cannot store clear card data in your systems. So slowly there was a change where every legacy application across the system, they started encrypting the card data. It took time. There were certain systems where they gave a compensating controls in place, took some time for 6 months, and then they complied with the card standards. So same thing is, I'm just predicting all the software vendors maybe will have to ensure that entire scope of information which is part of the PII, they will be stored in encrypted format, they will be masked. What sort of, whatever controls feasible, they should be implemented. It will become a journey. We will have lot of legacy applications in various organizations which will be maybe at least a decade old technologies are still running because they are core applications, your mainframes. So there will be changes in all these applications, and eventually you will arrive at a stage where your entire life cycle of the data, maybe origination of data, and there you put encryption, data at rest you put encryption. It is already there, but we have to make it so watertight that even people should really be justified in asking for data, even if they have to do some marketing or some any other cross-sell or analytics of profitability. Nobody should be able to access the data. So that is a regime I am seeing eventually where it will be totally controlled, and there will be lot of access controls. Maybe systems will get integrated with a tool like Secure, where only Secure protected files get generated from the applications and the business processes. If it gets shared outside the organization, it should only the intended recipient should be able to open that, otherwise it should be junk. So these steps will eventually come, and there will be, the vendors will also ensure that they are also compliant to the DPDP Act. So that is what I'm just predicting from my experience of the PCI, where we will have to tell, no, if you don't need the information, don't capture. So for example, we used to have a loan application. I'm just giving this input so that you can just preempt what you might have to go through. Then we really check for collection purpose. See, earlier we did not have the CIBILs of the worlds where we could by just giving some feedback we could not get a footprint in the industry. So what we used to check in the form, do you have relationship with any other bank? Do you have any other credit card? That used to be happening before the PCI. The intention was, if the customer stops paying or just vanishes from that place, at least we have some, whether other place he has a relationship, we can go and check. Then what happened, we stopped collecting all these, stop collecting such information.
Right.
So eventually the roadmap would be, you will have a central system where you store the PI data, all other applications, they just refer to that, so that you can protect one place like a fortress. So these are some changes I am anticipating, and that is where the whole technologically we might be able to control things.
And we are very happy to partner and be your data protection partner of choice. Thank you, Mr. Rangaraj.
Yeah, I think fantastic points being brought out by Mr. Suresh as well. To add to what he was saying, a lot of the esteemed organizations here on the dais are actually dealing with recurring volumes of data in terabytes.
Right.
A defense company, for example, however, deals with programs. Each program is awarded, there is a life cycle to the program being delivered, and so on and so forth. One specific nuance to data protection in that context is how do you ensure security of data from day zero of a program? I think that's an important angle for many startups, for many projects, businesses. I think that's an important angle to consider. And it's really about how do you implant that discipline from day zero, because the minute you allow, I would say, loose practices to proliferate, it becomes very difficult to control after that. But if you actually catch something on day zero and kind of ensure data security at inception, then people get mentally trained to behave in a more secure manner. So that's point number one. And maybe the second point I'd like to also add is the points on data in motion, data in rest, protecting all of that and translating that into a set of practices which are repeatedly effective. I think the data governance layer is an extremely tricky task, but it, at least in our experience, can be cracked by being very clear about what the perimeters are. Where does data ingress and exit from the organization? What are my control points there? Where does data get into a supplier network which has XYZ levels of risk? I mean, for example, in the security manual for licensed defense industries, there are A category, B category, and C category suppliers. And the levels of security can be different for each. So setting in place the correct controls at the ingress and exit points can be extremely helpful in terms of managing the entire data governance bit.
Yeah, I correlate security practitioners a lot with parenting, right? Like I don't know how many of us have teen or post-teen kids, right? And like you said, Mr. Rangarajan, right? It's very, very difficult to layer security on if you've not built it ground up, right? And a very recent example was taking away my son's phone. It was fine when he didn't have a phone, right? There was much lesser problem. But once you give the phone, taking it away is virtually impossible, right? There's hell and fire and a lot more if that happens, right? So yes, security day zero, even for a 2-people startup, is absolutely critical, and that was very progressive. I know we interacted, very in the very early days of the program, and I can definitely, or all of us can see the benefit of layering security on versus just ground up having security to start with, right? It's far easier journey that way. So thanks a lot for that. This has been very interesting. I know we have only a couple of minutes more, and I wanted to invite each of the panel members to share maybe one insight of one big mistake that you've made in the last couple of years in the context of, you know, security on the intersection of security and privacy, and what were your learnings from that one big oversight, mistake, and so on, that, you know, all the audience members can in some sense learn from you. And we've got, and let me repeat, we've got 100 years here, right? We are trying to compress it in the next couple of minutes. And Ravi, why don't we start from you?
Yeah, so having worked in different organizations, I feel that, you know, asset management is one of the areas which is often overlooked. So when I was working in one of the organization, we had basically, you know, it was long back, so they were using like a ring technology, and they had a central breakout of the internet. So basically the internet was working dead slow. So when we investigated, we identified there were around 4 machines which were basically choking the bandwidth. So, and those 4 machines were not part of the inventory, and hence they were never patched. So one of the, I think, areas is the asset management reconciliation and ensuring regular patching. So this is the common area I've seen, at least in not one, but maybe more than one company which I worked for.
Thank you, that's very valuable. Suresh?
So actually, I don't have any major visibility on a mistake or such, but we should be agile, we should continuously improve, as an organization, we should be able to preempt things. So that will really help. For example, in this, this theme is DP Act, we should not maybe wait for another 6 months for the government to come with the feedback. Maybe, if we are able to prepare well in advance, check all the controls which are in place, check with global practices, maybe you will be able to save some time or the last minute rush. So that is some learning, maybe which we can share. Suppose it comes as a rule after 6 months that you have to do this and you are rushing against time. So those kind of checks and balance all organizations should have to preempt the technological changes, the legal changes, the process changes. So that will really help you deliver things in a timely manner and not rush through things. So that can be at a high level our experience. Otherwise, you will be lagging. But for our organization, what I can say by experience, I have been with the bank for almost 20 years. They start a bit slow, but they have become a leader in all maybe business opportunities. So we were the maybe a late entrant into the full-fledged retail asset business or the card business. But today we are number 1. So that is how, if you consistently focus with time, maybe you will lead in all your segments. So that is what I want to share.
Very well, very well. Good. Come on, Animesh.
So one thing we generally overlook is at the center of the entire security are the people, and mostly large number of population in the organization will be unaware of what are the breaches which is happening, what are the cybersecurity flaws in the organizations. So it's very important to bring in the awareness. So earlier, generally the stance used to be is, whenever a breach used to happen, we used to keep under wraps. But then we realized that until people are made aware, and when I speak about awareness, it's just not telling them, okay, don't do this, don't do that, because people do not understand not doing and doing something, how it will impact them. Until you are given a live example or practical example how a breach happens or what exactly has happened. So we started relaying certain information back to the people, that certain things have happened. Such InfoSec violation created such and such problem. That really made an impact to the organization, where people could now realize, okay, this, if I do this, this is what can happen. So as an organization, I think a lot of organizations generally keep a lot of things under wraps. Some things, yes, you need to for greater good, but there are few things I think you have to make people aware. This is what has happened in the organization and this is how it is going to impact. So one small mistake or one small fallacy on your end will create organizational impact to everybody. So I think that was one of the learnings we had as we progressed, and we are also ensuring that the awareness programs is driven through various methodologies across to the entire personnel of Indian Navy.
Very valuable.
I think fantastic points by all the members thus far. I'd also like to add one more point on the basics. If you see, we might have the most sophisticated systems possible, but my experience is that even today, a lot of our people are actually susceptible to the simplest of phishing attacks.
Right.
And that is not something that you can actually control through any system. If a person decides to give the password, I think it is not going to help any organization after that. So I think just the point that Commander Animesh mentioned around awareness and ensuring that there is hygiene in terms of some of the basics, I think is going to be extremely important. Recently in June 2023, there was a report about America's most cyber secure companies 2023. Intel was on top of the list. And there are a lot of the companies, in fact, a lot of them are expectedly in the banking and finance domain, as you would rightly expect.
Sure.
The number one hygiene aspect that they ensure is password hygiene. Right?
Okay.
The second thing that they do is just basic awareness sessions on phishing campaigns. That actually attacks almost 80% of the potential risk areas, and that itself can be of a huge benefit to any organization.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think there's the common pattern here that is emerging is that, hey, awareness or people represents the biggest risk and of course the biggest assets for nearly every enterprise, and awareness is a big driver, and it could be a preventive rather than corrective. And I think Isaac and the team at Seclor we are experimenting with an idea of what we call the harmless breach, right? And the basic idea of the harmless breach is that in some sense there is as we talk to security professionals all around, and I think we saw one slide in Dr. Dugal's deck that 80% of the enterprises are breached just in the last 1 year, or right, and so on. So our assumption here is that that's a very tall task, and that task becomes taller and taller as the number of people increases exponentially, right? So if the number of units of effort to educate a 10 people company is 100, by the time you become a 100 people company, it doesn't get multiplied by 10, it gets multiplied by 100, right? So it's 10,000 and not 1,000, and so on. So one of the concepts that we are experimenting with is the harmless breach, which is you kind of assume that breaches are going to happen, right? Let's start with that. And then how do you make sure that even if there is a breach, right, somebody actually shares the password or shares that data or customer data or personal data, how do you make sure that a infrastructure breach doesn't result in a data breach, right? And it's a fine line, because then you are starting to define, hey, what does a data breach even mean, kind of thing. So we are still in early days, but that's almost the post of that, right? Like if educating, I don't know, 100,000 people or 200,000 people at HDFC plus HDFC Bank put together, right, that's a very, very tall task. I mean, I'm the CEO of a company that is barely a couple of 100 people, right, or thereabout, and that's already a tall task for our organization. And I cannot even imagine what it will take to educate, people who are on submarines and ships and 200,000, 300,000 people that work for the bank and all the contractors and so on. That looks like a really, really tall task here, but it has to be done, right? I'm not questioning the need for it to be done, but it does appear like a very, very tall task, and something which I think as security professionals we'll have to start gearing ourselves up to say, hey, network protection, firewall, antivirus, encryption are great things, but look, we are all in some sense trying to become psychotherapists for lack of a better word for these group of 100,000 people that we are expected to, 100,000 assets that we are out there protecting, right? But any last thoughts? And I know we are just at the edge of time, but any last thoughts?
One point
Suresh?
on the awareness piece, which I also manage as part of my domain. So we got more traction when we started sending dashboards to our top management. So earlier we were trying on our own, forcing people to do the awareness courses. People used to fall prey to phishing mails sent internally through our simulation platforms. But what changed was, two things happened. One is we started engaging our senior management, presenting the figures, statistics in all our information security committee, sending notes to the board. And also after this COVID, Teams became like a birthright. Everybody has a now tool to where we can communicate. So what we do continuously try to keep on, I have two guys, whose job is at least per day you conduct one training. You send invite to 1,000 people, at least 100 will join. That way you keep on engaging with them, reinforce, especially the phishing related attacks and other best practices, acceptable usage practices. But it is you can't use the word thankless, but you have to keep on trying. We also have a HR grid where we are tied up with HR. Anybody clicking on a phishing link for a second time, first time he will get a warning note from HR. Then there is a strong punishment grid also. That is never a thought process as an educator, but all these factors are required. We have a very detailed grid where if somebody repeats the same thing, there will be stringent action. And we never wanted to name and shame, but now we take the names and send it to the top management and all. So that is how we are managing. It never happens with zero clicks, it never happens. So somebody or the other will fall, he will be a new employee. He would be in some remote location where he's not fully aware. So it's a continuous journey. That's my experience.
Thank you. And yeah, security and privacy is not an easy job. One of the things I always correlated, I spent many years living in a student hostel, right? And the mess of that hostel was run by the students themselves. And I always relate the security job to the mess secretary, which is the most thankless job, right? If the food is good, nobody remembers you. But if the food is bad, you know who you're going to get a call, right, very quickly, and so on. But thanks a lot, everybody here, for your service. We are very thankful that you are doing the jobs that you are doing, and that's why we have the luxury of being here, protecting the nation, protecting some of the largest defense and financial services companies in the region. Thank you, everyone. And I know we had kept some time for audience questions. If I can ask Devesh to give us another 5 minutes, maybe we can take one or two questions. Do we have 5 minutes? Okay.
Yes, we do have.
All right, thank you.
Just on the lighter side, since we are concluding, so we started evaluating top SSO solutions globally.
Right.
And 15 days later, I will not be taking any names. We got a news, the global leader in SSO, global leader in password management, they themselves have got hacked. So it's a dilemma. So we are trying to authenticate internal solution which is in my data center protected. It works only on a bank laptop and I try to connect it to some global leader, SSO and passwordless solution, and 15 days you get a news that they are hacked. They are saying nothing new, it has happened multiple times. You just change the password, we have patched it. So this is something, it is a reality. So even just adopting technology for the sake of adoption might be counterproductive. That is on the lighter side.
Yeah,
but
you
this
just
is what
played
I
out my
experienced.
worst nightmare, by the way. Right? It's bad for a bank to be in the news for data breaches, but I can tell you there's nothing worse than a data security company to be in the news for a data breach. Right? That's my worst nightmare. There you've lived out, Suresh. But thanks a lot. We'll open it up for maybe one or two questions depending on time. I don't know if there's a mic. Can we get the mic over? If you can identify yourself, name and organization, that'll be really good.
So my name is Raghav, and I work for CPP Group, taking care of the governance risk and
At
compliance.
least I'm maybe growing old, but I'm having trouble. Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Raghav, and I work for CPP Group for the Asia business. I handle the governance risk and compliance. So taking back to the first question, that where should the DPDP compliance sit? So I think a lot of focus, was that it seems that the CISO office, in terms of what you all have said, looks to be the right place where the compliance with DPDP sits. But I mean, it seems that, security is just one aspect of it. So even in your flyer, when we look at the 7 principles, security is just one part of it. And I mean, do you think that this piece of DPDP compliance should sit outside the CISO office because the complaints that you will get from the end users is those would not be that you didn't keep my data secure. It would be, why did you share my data elsewhere? Do you have my consent? How do you retain it?
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, what's your view on this? In terms of the industry meetings and the people I meet, it seems to be, forming a view that security is the most important aspect.
No, I appreciate that
but
question.
That is not, I think so.
Yeah, I'll maybe quickly comment on it, and I'll open it up to the panelists. I think the good way to look at it is follow the trail, right? Which is, if there is a breach to DPDPA, who's the first person who's going to land up in prison, right? And maybe the security should or compliance should sit there and then kind of go down from there. But any of the panelists, I think this is a question for which will worry pretty much every panelist, right? Ravi?
I think they have, apart from the data protection officers, they have a term called as consent manager. I think it will be a very challenging job, what I feel, to have that consent manager, because every time he will have to go back to each and every person to have that consent. So I feel implementation of the consent manager will be challenging in my view. That's the only piece in the DPDPA which worries me from the consent standpoint.
So do you believe that there should be, the DPDPA compliance should be almost a separate function in some sense, or is security or the security team, the CISO's office, a good place to house that?
I think CISO office will be the right place to start, because there is a lot of technology related aspects and also legal. So it will be a combination of law, people, for example, the DPO at our bank is a technology expert and he's also a lawyer. So he's done his CASSP and also a lawyer. So these kind of combinations will really, be able to propagate and roll out the privacy concept, talk to stakeholders. But one correlation from the banking side is, RBI came out with a circular that a CISO should report to either the Chief Risk Officer, ED or MD. So in future, maybe when things mature, things fall in place after all the learnings and controls are put in place, maybe for banks, RBI will come out with some specific clear-cut guidelines, and similarly maybe even IRDA or SEBI will come out with some clarity and direction for their stakeholders.
Yeah, and it's a good way to send somebody else to prison instead of yourself, right? So that's a good thing to do generally. We have time for one more question here. Anybody? If there are no questions, it usually means either everybody gets it or nobody has a clue. Which one is it? All right, I think that's been great. Thanks a lot, audience, for your for your time, and I cannot thank the panel members enough for taking out time from their busy schedules and spending this hour with us. I'm sure we are definitely wiser. I can already see halos behind everybody's head over here, and it's not only because, hey, I'm bald. But thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Big round of applause.